The last part to our percents unit is simple interest. Simple interest is the one thing with percents that does not use an equation really or proportions that we've been using all along. Simple interest uses the formula I equals PRT. And some students remember this as I pick red tulips because I equals PRT, so I pick red tulips to help them remember. I is the amount of interest. Interest is like a fee that is added on to a credit card, or it's an amount that's added into a savings account to say, hey, thanks for giving us your money, that a bank says to you. So interest is money. Amount of principal. P is principal. That is money that you deposit into a savings account or that you add on to a credit card. R is going to be rate as a decimal, meaning you have to take the percent and change it to a decimal. And then the last part is time, but specifically it's going to be time in years. So it's not going to be in months, it's got to be in years. Now, knowing that this is going to be the formula, let's go ahead and solve a couple problems, noting that we're going to round to the nearest hundredth if necessary. So the formula is I equals P times R times T. You deposit $572.34 in an account that pays 4.5% interest. How much do you earn after 6 years? So let's fill in the easy parts. First thing that's super easy for us to fill in is 6 for the time because of the 6 years. Next thing that's easy for us to fill in is the rate. Now, you see 4.5% interest. Your gut is going to want to put that in for I, but because it's a percent, that's what tells us it's a rate. So to change 4.5% to a decimal, we move it 1, 2 spaces to the left, fill in a 0. That means our rate is 0.045. The last thing we have to deal with is the $572.34. That's what we deposited. So therefore our principal is $572.34. We use our calculator, we multiply that through, and we end up finding out that I equals 154.5318. Now we know that does not make any sense for money, so we have to round to the nearest hundredth, meaning that it's 154.5. We look at what does the 1 make the 3 do? The 1 makes the 3 stay the same. We don't need to worry about the 8. So we end up with $154.53. Now let's take a look at the second problem. You borrow $450 to pay for a laptop. The interest rate is 2.8%. After 18 months, how much interest do you owe? Knowing that the formula is I equals P times R times T, let's fill in what we know. We see interest rate is 2.8%, but we know that if it's a percent, it's going to be the rate. So 2.8%, move it 1, 2 places to the left and fill in a 0. So our rate is 0.028. 18 months is our time. Well, we said that time had to be in years. So we can put it as a fraction 18 over 12 because there's 18 months that it was there out of 12 months in a year. The $450 is our principal because that's what we borrowed and that's what our P is. Now, if we didn't want to put it in as a fraction 18 over 12, we could plug it in as 450 times 0.028 times 18 divided by 12 is 1.5. So therefore, we would end up with times 1.5. When we multiply all of this out, we find out that I equals 18.9. This doesn't make sense when we go to do our answer. We're talking money. Therefore, we know we need to have two numbers for our cents. We don't want to insert a 0 in the middle of the number, so we can add it to the end, giving us $18.90. Okay, so now we're going to do some examples, finding things other than interest. So even though I know it says I equals on all of these, that's a typo, and we're going to correct that. So for the first one, we're just going to draw a line and cross off the I. We know the formula is I equals P times R times T. In each of these cases, we're rounding to the nearest hundredth. Main reason we're doing that is because we're talking about money in majority of these cases. So let's fill in what we know. Our principal is $45,000. So somebody deposited that in a savings account or they spent that on a credit card. R is 6.5%. So to make it a decimal, we move it 1, 2 spots, fill in a 0. So our rate is 0.065. And our interest is $10,500, meaning that's additional money you'll pay if you're paying off your credit card, or it's a money that's a thank you fee that's been paid to you by a bank. We're searching for time. We multiply principal and rate, and we end up with 10,500 equals 2,925 times T. To get our answer, we take 10,500 and we divide it by 2,925. And we find out that with rounding, T is approximately 3.59, and we know it's going to be years. So finding interest is really easy because that's just multiplication. The moment you find principal, rate, or time, there's going to still be multiplication, but then there's that extra division step. Now taking a look at the second one, again, we're not finding R. We're not finding I. In this case, we're going to find P. Our interest is $452, meaning that's what's been paid to you by a bank, or that's what you've paid back when you paid a credit card. Our rate is 3.1%. So we have to move the decimal 1, 2 spots, fill in a 0. So our rate is 0.031. Our time is 2 years, and we're looking for principal. We multiply rate and time. And we get P times 0.062. To find principal, we take 452, we divide it by 0.062, and that's going to give us our principal. Once again, we're going to have to round to the nearest hundredth because that's what the directions say. And in principal, we're dealing with money. So the amount that was deposited or spent on the credit card was $7,290.32. Going on to the last one, in this case, we're looking for rate. So we know that I equals P times R times T. The interest is $1,500, which is the amount we put on the credit card, the amount that was deposited in a bank account. Our principal is $45,000, and our time is 3.5 years. We're asked to find rate. In this case, we're going to multiply principal and time, and we end up finding out that we have 1,500 equals 157,500 times R. To get R, by itself, we do the inverse multiplication, and we divide 1,500 divided by 157,500. equals R, and we get that R is approximately 0.00952. Notice that I went out 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 spots, so that when we turn this into a percent, we move it 1, 2 spots, we get 0.9. 2 makes the 5 stay the same, so we have 0.95%. When you are finding rate, your answer needs to be changed back into a percent. So in each of these cases, with interest, anytime we're dealing with R, we're going to have to turn it into a percent or convert it from a percent to a decimal. Now let's go ahead and look at some word problems involving simple interest again. Mr. Peterson wrote a check of $7,820 to pay off a loan, which was given to him at a rate of 5% simple interest for 3 years. How much did he borrow annually? Well, we know our formula is I equals P times R times T, because I pick red tulips. And they tell us that he wrote a check for this amount, indicating that that's going to be your principal. And that it was given to him at a rate of 5%. So if we have 5%, 1, 2, that's 0.05 for 3 years. Time is 3. And it asked how much did he borrow. That's not your interest. So we're going to solve for interest. And we find out that interest is equal to $1,173. We got this by multiplying the 7,820, the 0.05, and the 3. To find out how much he borrowed, we have to find something called the balance, meaning how much is in the account. To find balance, we add interest plus principal. So in this case, we add the 1,173 plus the 7,820, and we end up with a total of $8,993 was borrowed. Now let's take a look at the second one. If the balance at the end of 8 years on an investment of $630 that has been invested at a rate of 9% is $1,083.60, how much was the interest? So we just saw that balance equals interest plus principal. They told us that our balance is $1,083.60, and we don't know how much interest is, but the principal was $630. So we can take 1,083.60, do the inverse of addition, which is subtraction, take away $630, and we're going to end up finding out that the amount of interest was $453.60. Because all we had to do was take the balance and subtract the principal. We didn't need all that stuff about the 8 years and the rate and all that stuff, because all we are asked about is the interest. The last problem. If $3,840 is invested in an account at 5% simple interest, how long will it take the account to grow to $4,800? Once again, we know that balance equals interest plus principal. And they told us that the balance is $4,800. We don't know the interest, but we know that the principal is $3,840 because that's what was deposited. To get interest, we can take the balance of $4,800, take away the principal, $3,840, and that tells us that the interest is $960. So now we can use our formula, I equals P times R times T, to figure out the time. We know the amount of interest is $960 from what we just found. We know that the principal is $3,840 because that's what was invested. The rate is 5%, which we know we have to move the decimal 1, 2 spots and fill in a 0, so that's 0.05, and we're looking for the time. We multiply principal and rate together, and that gives us 192 times time. To get time, we have to say 960 divided by 192, and we find out that time equals 5 years.